We did a lot of light tube matches early on where
Yeah.
there was a lot of really crazy stuff. I got really bloody a couple times. Light tubes everywhere, glass pane. Oh, that's the one. So I'm sitting up against a picnic table with a glass pane laid up against the table, like on the seat, and I'm leaned over the glass pane.
All right. So backyard wrestling is many things to many people, and occasionally you run into someone who has a similar experience as you, parallel lives, if you will. I've been lucky enough to run into this gentleman here who has a very similar background as me. From Golden Triangle Media, it's my pleasure to introduce Rick Keller. Rick, thank you so much for doing this.
Man, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I've done a little look around your channel. I'm excited to talk with you and get maybe a little more exposure on your platform. It'll be a good time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So right off the bat, I want to get started with what is Golden Triangle Media? Can you explain what Golden Triangle Media is?
Well, so at first it was an idea that a friend of mine and I had when we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do on the internet. Like we've always had these creative adventures that we've taken, and we decided to start a podcast. And there had been so many podcasts about so many different things out there, and the one untapped realm kind of in the podcast world seemed to be like backyard wrestling. And since we had such a big experience in it, we figured we had a lot of media and a lot of content to go off of and a lot of stuff to talk about. So at first it was just going to be like a YouTube channel where we interview people, drop podcasts, maybe talk music or what have you. And as the podcast started rolling, a lot of our old friends from our community started watching and talking with us, and the hype for what we were talking about started growing to the point where we ended up getting so much activity that we had a reunion show last year. And on the back of that, it just kind of turned into I'm going to use this channel as an opportunity to just showcase all the backyard wrestling media that I have stored over the last 15 years or so. So it went from like general friends talking and podcast interviews type stuff. Now it's just a backyard wrestling channel.
No, and that's great. I've been checking out your stuff. You've been posting old matches, which is fantastic because a lot of that stuff, that's 10 plus years ago. So it's like this little time capsule of what the world was like and what our lives were like and what the industry was like back then. So that's awesome what you're doing. Um, Let me ask, what was your first exposure to backyard wrestling? How did you even learn what backyard wrestling was?
So my high school best friend was involved in it slightly, throughout a couple years before I met him. And he had those backyard wrestling tapes, the best of volume one and two.
Yeah.
And we were watching, I want to say, probably a WWE show or whatever. And we were definitely hardcore juggalos back in those days. Paint your face, go spray Fago at the ICP concert. So it would be that and wrestling pretty much all the time. And he's like, hey, I got a couple of these tapes. Do you want to check them out? So we're hanging out. We watch the best of backyard wrestling. I'm getting into it a little bit. And he's like, by the way, I also kind of do this stuff. So like if you would like to get into it in any way, then like maybe come hang out with me once or twice and see if you like it.
No, that's awesome. It's the same for us. I remember those tapes vividly, like M Dog 20 and Josh
Hmm.
Prohibition. I was huge marks for them. Like that, like was so eye opening for me. Like, wait, you can do this, and it created this whole snowball effect for me.
Yeah, of course. And especially like at the very beginning, all you're doing is throwing suplexes and stone cold stunners with a friend holding a camera. But after a while, the deeper you get into it and see what's actually going on in the world of backyard wrestling, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Now, what year did you start backyard wrestling?
So like I would say I had my first match, like the first actual thing that I did on camera, probably like really early 2007,
Okay.
maybe late 2006.
Okay. Yeah, I wrestled from 2000 to 2007. So as I was winding down, it sounds like that's when you were winding up.
Yeah, I'm just you reanimated, man.
There you go. Now when you were wrestling, did you guys have any fans? Was it no fans? Was it just you guys doing it? You didn't have like an audience or anything?
Well, at the very beginning, for the most part, it was just the fans were the boys.
Yeah.
And because the location that well, so this is like from my personal experience, but um, from the crew of people that were wrestling before I got there, they held a couple shows for the whole neighborhood on a trampoline.
Mhm.
And they had like neighbors and family members and brothers and sisters, and they charged tickets, and they were all like 12 and 13 years old. But that was a little bit before me. By the time I got into it, it was a little more grown up and a little more dangerous. So like it wasn't necessarily for the family members in the neighborhood. Um, but I did our wrestling base was directly behind an apartment complex. So every now and then somebody or someone would come through and hang out and watch for an hour or so.
No, that's what's up. Yeah, when we're doing it, we started in my backyard, and then eventually my mom was like, "Look, that lawsuit bullet is coming for me. We need to dodge this." So we started wrestling at a park by my high school, and kids from my school would come watch us every week. And so that was like this eye-opening experience because now we have instant feedback to everything we're doing. And then we're starting to be real critical of everything. Like, wait a minute, how come they popped off of this and not this? This hurt way more, but they popped bigger off of this, and we started
Hmm.
analyzing our stuff more.
Now, did you guys actually wrestle like in the playground, or was it like a field next to the park?
It was just straight grass. There was like this little like circular grass area, and we're like, we'll just wrestle there. We'll come out the
Hmm.
bushes. That'll be our little Titantron, and we'll just wrestle there. One of the crazy things is like since the fans are right there, we didn't have like a backstage area, so we like legit kayfabed everybody. Like heels and baby faces traveled separately. We wouldn't talk to each other before the show. Like we already knew what we were gonna do before we got there. We tried to kayfabe the fans as much as possible.
Love that for backyard wrestling. That's fantastic. Because my crew specifically was very much so the opposite. We were just like playing characters that are playing characters, you know?
Mhm.
And we kind of just said, did, acted however, and still expected to get booed in certain situations or what have you. But there'd be conversations with the referees and the fans and each other as we were wrestling. We took the spots a lot more seriously than the presentation for sure.
No, totally. I was always since I was the guy who edited all of our tapes, I was always thinking about like what would look good in a highlight reel.
Hmm. That was
Um,
also my job too. I was also the editor for my crew, so I was in a very similar situation.
nice. Now you talked about just spots and stuff. What are some of the craziest spots you did during your backyard wrestling career? What are some stuff that sticks out?
Oh, that I did. For me, I mean, the stuff that I did doesn't really hold as strong a memory as some of the stuff that I had seen.
Hmm.
But let me think. Okay, so I took a dragon suplex off the top rope to the mat. That was a big one. That one hurt. Man, that I did. We did a lot of light tube matches early on where
Yeah.
there was a lot of really crazy stuff. I got really bloody a couple times. Light tubes everywhere, glass pane. Oh, that's the one. So I'm sitting up against a picnic table with a glass pane laid up against the table, like on the seat, and I'm leaned over the glass pane. And Hack Edgeman runs out of nowhere, giant drop kick through the glass pane, and my head hits off the seat
Mm.
of the picnic table. That was gnarly. That one hurt. I probably still have a little bit of a lump or a scar back here somewhere, but yeah, that one was wild.
Yeah, no, those we were big on the light tubes as well because they were cheap. You could get them for like a buck a pop, and then they would
Hmm.
explode on camera. They look great on camera. They didn't hurt that bad because when they explode, they usually explode away from you, so it's more
Yeah,
visual than anything.
yeah, absolutely. And for the most part, I mean, there weren't really a lot of injuries that came with it. One of our friends was a big bleeder, and it just seemed like if he was even around light tubes, he would start to bleed. But aside from that, I mean, most of us came out pretty much unscarred. So it was really dangerous, it seemed like, and we got away from it after a while. So I think that
Yeah,
was probably for the best.
yeah, no, I get that. We had one of our top guys was like the flippy dippy dude. Another guy was like the powerhouse ground and pound dude. And I'm not an athlete. I couldn't be either of those. So I was like, I'll get hit with shit. That'll be my spot.
Yeah,
That's what I can
yeah,
do. I
absolutely. Get hit with stuff and be a brick wall.
Yeah, like I remember there was one match we did, and there was like at the park we wrestled, there was like these logs that separated the sand part from the grass part. And that was where we would do high flying moves because we could at least get like 2 feet off the ground. And my friend was going to give me like a gut wrench power bomb off of that onto some light tubes, but either he slipped or he stepped off too soon and he couldn't get me up. And so in midair, I have to like twist and turn and get in position so I land flat. Because if I don't, I'm going to get hurt. And if I botch this move, it's going to look terrible on camera. And why take this bump if the spot is botched? So I had to like do all the work and power bomb myself in midair to save this spot.
Absolutely gnarly. Do you have that on your channel somewhere?
I do have that on my channel. There was another thing. I was feuding with my friend, and we both had auto shop together. And there was like this junker car in the back, and so we shot this little vignette where he gave me a power bomb off the roof of the car onto the hood, and we had the hood open, so when I get slammed, the hood would slam shut.
Hell
And
yeah.
I had it in my head that like I was so paranoid that like somehow my fingers would end up under the hood and just get lopped off when that thing slammed shut. So when I took the bump, my arms are like right at my side. I'm trying to stay as flat as possible so nothing happens.
Yeah, of course, man. That was one of the things like I don't know if your guys had any type of training or if you just went into it like free balling, but one of our guys did have a little bit of training. The rest of us were just doing whatever felt right at the time. So like we thought we knew how to be safe, even though we probably weren't always being safe. And just coming up with the craziest stuff and like sometimes not even thinking about the worst case scenario, just doing it and seeing what happens. Like, I don't know, man. If I feel like if I had kids at this point, I would not want them to be doing some of the stuff that I was doing at that age.
Yeah, no, when we were doing it, this was pre-YouTube, so there wasn't a lot of information out there. Like we had Tough Enough, and that was
Hmm.
pretty much like our first glimpse behind the curtain as far as like taking bumps and stuff. And then UPW in Southern California put out like a DVD that's like wrestling school on tape where it's just like step by step how to, and like John Cena's in there back when he was the prototype and Samoa Joe's in there because they were both in UPW. And so I picked that up and we were watching that because that was like step by step. Here's how you do a lockup. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. But that was really it. And a lot of it was just common sense. A lot of it was just like, pretty sure I got to land flat. Pretty sure I don't want to
Hmm.
land on my head. How do I do
Hmm.
this safely?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was very much pretty sure I want to land on my head because that followed me as I went, and I realized that as somebody the size that I was then, and then, I got a little smaller, got back up to that size, but like they wanted to see the big guy get dropped on his head. So I showed it to them as much as I could. And neck doesn't always go the right direction these days, but we made it out.
Oh, no, same here. My neck is all screwed up. My ankles are all screwed up. Sometimes it sounds like a deck of cards when I shuffle my neck. Like my
Yeah.
wife will turn to me and be like, "Oh, wait, you can hear that too? I thought it was just me." Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but honestly, like I hate to say it, but it feels like it was worth it. All the
Yeah.
times that we spent doing all this stuff, and it's like we put our body through hell and filmed it, so maybe at the time 50 people could see it, and I still feel like every second was worth it. So I couldn't imagine what WWE guys feel like with millions of people. Like they could be crippled in their 50s and probably still love every second of it.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, at the time, nobody really saw what we were doing, but now you fast forward 10, 15, 20 years later, and now YouTube's a thing, social media is a thing, and all of the stuff you did, all the stuff I did is now finding an audience that hadn't seen it before. So it did pay off in the long run. We played the long game here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the thing about our media is like I'm not sure if maybe like you guys were a little earlier, so it was pre-YouTube, but YouTube was popping up whenever we first started.
Yeah.
And so it was there, it was an outlet for us, but so many people in our community were either training or fully trained professional wrestlers. And the whole backyard wrestling scene was looked down upon tremendously. Like you could not be a backyard wrestler and a professional wrestler if you did it openly. The vets at the time would not book you, take liberties on you, talk crap on you the entire time backstage. You just could not get anywhere in the local independent wrestling scene or beyond that if they knew or even thought you were a backyard wrestler. So all this footage, while like it could have been put on YouTube back in the day and it would have probably done great numbers, especially on early YouTube, the guys themselves requested that it not be put on YouTube so that they could go with their pro career.
No, yeah, no, I totally get that. I interviewed Leroy Patterson last year, and he kind of mentioned the same thing. He wrestled in XPW for a little while, and he mentioned that like he did like one last backyard show after he got trained, but he had to like do it in secret because he didn't want them to find out. So that's pretty common. I hear that a lot.
Hmm.
Now when you were backyard wrestling, were you booking as well, or were you just a wrestler and was somebody else booking?
Oh yeah, I booked, I wrote, I planned matches for people. I gave my friends their move sets. I edited the shows. I made the music videos. It was in my backyard. It was all out of Rick's pocket. Every single thing that needed to be done that somebody didn't want to do, I did.
Oh no, that's the same. That's what got me into video editing and all the stuff I'm doing now. It's like I had to learn web design because we needed a website, so I had to teach myself how to make one. I had to teach myself graphic design because we all needed logos and flyers and posters and stuff and t-shirts. So it was all self-taught.
Absolutely. Well, for me, lucky enough, graphic design was a high school class whenever I was there. So I was able to take that as an elective just because I wanted to use it for our backyard wrestling stuff. So
Hmm.
it was actually really cool to be able to like work on something. Like, I mean, obviously you have school projects that you have to do when you're in these classes, but like I knew the reason I was in that class was to get better at Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff like that so that I could use it for backyard wrestling as soon as I got home.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, same thing here. Like all the skills I have now, I had to learn so that way my backyard wrestling shows would look better.
Hmm.
Um, So you said you were booking and putting matches together. Backyard wrestling's supposed to be fun, but sometimes egos come into play, sometimes politics come into play. Did you ever have to deal with that? Did you ever have to placate people?
Oh, constantly, especially with how big our community was. Like we were global. We had Canadians and Australians and UK people that all traveled to the States, traveled to Pittsburgh, traveled to my backyard to wrestle on backyard wrestling shows. We were all I want to say like playing super indie, like my backyard was PWG and people wanted to be here so that we could do the dream matches and it was absolutely insane. But whenever you have people spending that type of money and that type of time and that type of effort, it's a pretty consistent battle of like trying to get people that you want to wrestle specific people while other people are like, I'll only come to your show if I can wrestle someone in this tier. Or not only that, but also like trying to placate my friends and do stuff that I specifically want to see that might not be best for business or what have you, but like a really good friend of mine against his favorite wrestler, I could make happen right now. And like I kind of have to not care what Johnny Two Tones thinks about it because the homie wants a match and I'm going to give it to him.
Yeah, no, with us there was two very distinct groups of people. There was the people who were just there to have fun, and then there was the people who were like taking it seriously and wanted to have good matches. And there was always like this clash. Because you'd have people who were like, I don't want to lose to him. He's weak. And I'd have to explain to them, guys, it's not real. It's fake.
Right,
He's only
right.
weak if you make him look weak. And so like
Hmm.
that was one thing we really had to learn is it's like the best wrestlers we had weren't necessarily the guys doing all the flippy dippy X division stuff. It was the guys who could make their opponents look good and would bump around for them and would give whoever they were wrestling a good match.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And whenever we first had our small little local crew, it was very clearly like three of us really cared a lot and wanted people on the internet to like see what we're doing and praise us for it. And the other half were just like, I need something to do on a Saturday, so I'm gonna come wrestle with you guys. And those people, as soon as we started taking it super seriously and came in contact with some of the trained local backyard guys, they just fell off like immediately. It was not their cup of tea. They did not want to go over spot after spot and practice stuff and have storylines. They just were there to do a couple fun things and then be out.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much the same with us. Eventually, that we just want to have fun group just kind of slowly eroded away, and then the we're here to take it seriously group was all that was left. Which then
Mhm.
gets hard when you only got like 6, 7 guys who take it seriously, and you got to figure out how am I going to book from this week to next? What stories can we tell without just repeating ourselves over and over again?
Yeah, no doubt. And our like Take It Fun group was actually smaller. We had 5 people total at that time with like 2 other people that would occasionally show up here and there. So it was like we were already in that state of mind, which is one of the reasons why we were like, dude, we gotta get together with these other guys and try and do more creative, different things instead of just Sick Rick versus Jimmy P for the 18th time. Like we either gotta grow or die.
That's actually why we ended up winding down and stopping, is because we had met a whole bunch of new people and it freshened everything up, and then they all kind of fell off, and we're like, well, we're back to the same 6 guys. How many times are we going to do Craven versus Kid Crush. We've seen this match 100 times already. And so we were like, I think we're done. I think we're done. Let's just
Mhm.
call it a career. There's really nothing new we can do right anymore.
Did you guys ever like meet up with people outside of your local? Like, did people ever travel to you or anything like
We
that?
we did. I remember we were at the park we used to wrestle at. It was like senior ditch day, and so none of our fans showed up, and we were like, well, we don't want to put on a show for nobody. So we just started like practicing spots and dicking around, and there was a group of people there just like shooting the shit, and they saw us, and they were backyard wrestlers from like 30 minutes away or whatever. And so they're like, "Oh, you guys wrestle?" We're like, "Yeah, you wrestle." And we started talking, and then it led to us like we went to their show and they came to our show. We did this whole interpromotional storyline between the two of us. And
Super
that was
fun.
great because now we got twice as many people to work with, and we have all these new matches we can do and all these new stories we can tell. And it was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Get adding people to your Fed, especially like on the regular basis, is a true huge game changer. I'm located in Pittsburgh, and we kind of like scavenged around our local as much as we possibly could and got all the guys together that actually were interested in doing it. And then eventually we added like four people from like Mount Morris, West Virginia, which is like over an hour away, but like they just saw what we were doing and wanted to be part of us. So they would drive up like twice a month and be part of our shows too. It got to be pretty crazy there for a couple of years. And yeah, I would say probably the best time of my life up until like I became an adult, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's so awesome, dude. So I want to talk to you about the documentary that put out,
Mhm.
Backyard Wrestling. It's not dead yet. Now, Josh Todd directed this, and you co-produced it with him. Is that correct?
Yeah. I did a lot of the pre-production work with him and talking about it and figured it out. Helped with cameras and whatnot, but I would say like 90% of this is Josh Todd's baby. I was just lucky enough to be able to host the show that he decided to film it at.
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, the documentary is basically it's recapping you guys' backyard wrestling careers, and then also documenting a 10-year reunion show that you guys put together. So what was the genesis of this project? Did the reunion show come first and then the documentary, or did they both happen in tandem? What's the story here?
I so as I said a little earlier, the podcast kind of led us to the reunion show, and we were already working on cameras and YouTube stuff and trying to figure out like this current generation of technology and what went into it and all that stuff. Then in the middle of the podcast, Josh Todd moved back here from LA, and he was working on being a comedian out there and such. And decided he wanted to come home for a little bit and maybe reset and figure out maybe something else that he might want to do. And he saw us using cameras and doing all the things. He decided to purchase some himself, and he just dug in super deep and he just got all the equipment and went as hard as you could possibly go, top of the line, everything. And he needed something to use it on. And whenever the idea for the show was already in motion, I think I said something to him about documentary, like just in passing, and he was like, I was thinking the same thing, dude. I would love to do something for this. And I'm like, I feel you, it would be great. But unfortunately, I am so deep in on this show. I'm talking to every single person on the roster. I'm planning the event. I am booking the ring and the building and the place that we're all going to be staying at. I'm making all the graphics and all the videos, and I'm still working on the podcast and music videos and stuff like that I'm putting together. I don't have time for the documentary. And I said, but if you are that interested in it and it's something that you would like to do, if you want to just completely take it, like the documentary's yours if you want to do it. And like I've never seen him smile so hard in my life. So he was ready. We met up at Denny's one morning, planned it all out, figured out how we wanted to go about it, and it was just on from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, and just looking at comments on Reddit and YouTube, the documentary seems to be pretty well received. People really enjoyed it. I've watched it a couple times. I loved it. I'm so glad the algorithm chose to bless me with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the algorithm's so strange sometimes, man, because I have whole shows that get thousands of views and then other things that I think are going to pop and they just get a couple hundred. So I like worked super hard on the thumbnail for this documentary, which is just about the only thing that I had to give to it, and obviously the YouTube channel platform. Um, and I wanted it to pop, and it did. It's doing really well, which is nice to see. I think it's at like 1,200 views right now, and it's been out for like what, a month or so, maybe less than that. So I hope that it continues to find its way out there. It seems like it gets a few views every day. So hopefully more and more people like you that are actually interested in it see it and are able to like get something from it. I know that Colt Cabana actually saw it and messaged one of our friends and he said that he said it was cute. So I'll take that from Colt Cabana.
There you go. Nothing wrong. Yeah, no, that algorithm, like same thing with me. Like some of my videos, I'm lucky if I get 100 or 200 views, and then some I'll get a couple thousand, and I'm like, I don't understand. I don't
Yeah.
understand why it's blessing one over the other, but whatever. So, one of the things in the documentary that I popped really hard for was the backyard wrestling link. You guys did featured the backyard wrestling link. And for
Hmm.
people who are younger than us, I don't know if they can appreciate the link the way you and I can. Because this was at a time when like social media wasn't really a thing. Like I don't think Twitter existed yet. So this was like a hub for backyard wrestlers where we can kind of come together. I remember they had like a directory of like they would just list all these different federations across the country. And when my Fed got listed, I was like, oh my God, we're legit. We're on the link.
Yeah,
Look,
we're
we're
one of them.
real.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and like I remember watching videos on there and I'm on the West Coast and it just seemed like the East Coast is where like this backyard wrestling hotspot. I never knew who ran the link. I never knew who was behind the scenes of it. I would just see all these videos from all these different feds and you'd see like the same guys in some of them. Like Anarchy Andy was everywhere. Didn't matter what the fed was, Anarchy Andy somehow got himself booked. And then after a while, there was this kid Freak Boy coming up, and people were calling him, "Oh, he's going to be the next Anarchy Andy." And then every year they would do those backyard gathering super shows. And I think it was
Uh-huh.
BYG4. They had Anarchy Andy and Freak Boy in a ladder match. And it was like the
Yeah.
backyard wrestling equivalent of Rock versus Hogan. It was like this
Yeah.
backyard dream match.
Yep.
And
Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, WrestleMania 25.
yeah, and that's something I don't know if this current generation can understand or appreciate just because the landscape is so different. Um, can you talk a little bit about your experiences with the backyard wrestling links, the memories you have?
I got really into like the community side of it almost right away. One of the people that were local to me that I hadn't met until a little bit later in my journey was fully entrenched in the backyard wrestling league. He was going to the super shows with Anarchy Andy and all those people. He was at BYG4. He met these people, but he was young. He was like 15 years old at the time. So he had met me eventually. We started our own thing, and then he started inviting people out here, like just one at a time, like B Cubed and Zane would just, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is someone from Philly or someone from Kentucky traveling to Pittsburgh to wrestle in my backyard with this dude? Like, what is the scenario? So I start Googling these guys' names and put them all together, and eventually takes me to the backyard wrestling link. And because I am already acquaintances with a few of them. I start to try to find their media and see what they're doing. And then, of course, you run into Zane versus Anarchy Andy, and you watch that, and your whole worldview changes of what you think backyard wrestling is. It absolutely is not, in at least in terms of this community, right? So I start posting some of our media on there, but unfortunately for us, we are not Zane, nor are we Anarchy Andy. We are very young in the game. We are not good at what we're trying to do. And a lot of the people on the Backyard Wrestling Link wanted to let us know that we're not good. And they gave us a really hard time for a little while. And one of my best friends, Hack Edgeman, um, he is not the type to take being crapped on lightly. So he would always fire back and always have something to say. And then he eventually became the aggressor in some of these scenarios because he was just predetermining the way that they were going to treat us. And so like our actual experience whenever it comes to interacting with people on the backyard wrestling link was not very good. Um, but the media that we found there and the ideas of super shows and community and brotherhood and all this stuff is stuff that we like kind of longed for after we found out that it existed. And like the idea of maybe being able to become friends with a couple of these guys and get them to come out to Pittsburgh for our shows would be awesome. But unfortunately, the link was like kind of dying out a little bit whenever Hack and I found it. So there was this other website called GBYWN that we stumbled upon in a very similar manner. And a lot of the kids on GBYWN were also new kids who probably weren't very good, but they weren't dumb enough to post their stuff on the link to get people making fun of them. They just all shared their stuff with each other on this GBYWN website. So I kind of like moved from the link to like posting on GBYWN full time to the point where like I was helping the person that ran the website. I helped him kind of turn it into like the link volume 2. We pushed it to more of like a forum based situation instead of a free webs page. Started taking the media more seriously than his backyard wrestling rankings that he would do and stuff like that. And like kind of copycatted off the link and took it to people that were a lot nicer. And if you build it, they will come. The link guys that weren't ready to be done yet and that were still wanting to be part of this community and brotherhood eventually realized that GBYWN was the place that they needed to be if they wanted to be a part of such a thing. So they ended up migrating over and kind of all melted together into one big backyard wrestling community.
Yeah, no, and that kind of going back to what we were talking earlier about the people who took it seriously and the people who were just there for having fun. It was nice having those different communities because, I'm in California, I'm on the West Coast. I always felt like an outsider looking in when it came to the link because it seemed like everything was on the East Coast with them. And so with GBYWN, it's this whole other group of people, and it was so much fun. Like I remember fucking Cockstrong, like Johnny
Yeah.
Cockstrong. Like I'd seen a video of him and it was like a compilation of his stuff, and I was like, "This is great! I love this
Yeah.
gimmick." Like
Yeah.
I was in a match I had in like '07. I like did a tribute to him in a match. I like hit somebody with my junk and was like, "Cockstrong, yeah." And it's
Hell
like it's
yeah.
a little Easter egg that nobody but me is gonna get because that's like a deep cut. But it's just like I loved seeing this community thriving, and I love seeing people working together and coming together to make something bigger than themselves. And it was almost since I was on the West Coast, I was like, oh, I wish I could be there. I wish I could be included. This looks like so much fun.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things. So, like, the guys that ended up eventually owning the link are West Coasters, but unfortunately not United States West Coasters, the Vancouver VCW guys.
Yeah.
They had a couple like VCW versus the Worlds, but only like the best of the best got invites, and even less of them were able to actually show up because getting to Canada whenever you're 20 years old, not everybody has a passport or what have you, you know. But the actual VCW Fed, I think, is probably, I wouldn't even say probably. I'll just say that they are the greatest backyard wrestling Fed of all time. And like if you were to build a Mount Rushmore of backyard wrestling, it's conceivable that 3 of the 4 people on it are VCW guys, which is absolutely insane that they all grew up and came up together and absolutely nuts.
Yeah, no, totally. And like we I know they've tried to resurrect the link a few times over the past few years, and I don't think they're ever going to be able to reclaim that former glory. I checked it out recently. It looks like it's been abandoned for like two or
Yeah.
three years. So
Hmm.
who knows what'll ever happen with that?
Well, unfortunately, the webmaster for the link, the guy that owned the original forum and stuff like that, passed away last year. So like the original backyard wrestling link in its initial form can't be brought back. All that's all under passwords and lock and
Yeah.
key and stuff like that. Which is maybe for the best. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily need to see the light of day that came out of the backyard wrestling link. We were young, dumb, and saying whatever we wanted in the early 2000s. So
Oh.
a lot of that stuff is probably best left in the past. But
Mhm.
I just feel like with Twitter and Facebook groups and Discord and stuff, like having forums are it's just such a lost thing. And
Yeah,
even with like a Discord group, it's like so many people want to own or run the Discord group. So instead of everybody coming together to be one community, it's like you got to join Johnny's and Timmy's and Bobby's and Ricky's. And it's like
Mhm.
there's not just one place for everyone to get together anymore.
Yeah, it's like it's this relic of a bygone era because the internet isn't like that anymore. Society isn't like that anymore, and so it's almost like this time capsule of the way things used to be.
Hmm.
You know, um, one of the things you talked about in the documentary is you talked about bonding with others who are in a similar situation, and so going back to kind of like what we've been talking about this whole time, what are what are kind of some of the experiences you've had and some of the relationships you formed through backyard wrestling that have stuck with you all these years later?
Well, I was in two different people's weddings that I met through backyard wrestling. I attended a third. Um, I have traveled more before I was 30 than my dad did his entire life. Um, I still message people from not only the other side of the state, but the other side of the country on a weekly basis, especially now that we've had this reunion show. It's everybody's kind of like back together and the buzz is back. So like it's a lot more conversations about sports and stuff, just little like guy talk bicker
Yeah.
constantly all the time now. But one one thing that was mentioned in the documentary by quite a few people that it just seems to be the overarching story of our community, at least, is that I could be traveling literally anywhere in the country outside of, the dead zone Rocky Mountains, literally anywhere else. And I can call somebody within an hour of where I'm at and I got a place to stay. Or if there's an emergency, they could come help me out. And it's the entire country. Like there's nowhere that I can be that I don't have at least somebody that I'd consider a friend that would be able to help me out of a jam or give me a place to stay or whatever. And I just think that that's so incredible and also like kind of crazy that like just life happened in a manner that afforded me that opportunity.
No, absolutely. I remember when YouTube first became a thing, I started posting some of the backyard wrestling videos I made. And I remember one of the first comments I got was somebody going, "Boy, that's an awful lot of black people." And I was like, "Is it?" Oh, I mean, I guess I never really counted before.
Yeah,
Because,
right.
it's all these different people from all these different walks of life, different beliefs, different families, different situations. But this one thing we all enjoy brought us all together. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and like even like some of the coolest things is like I have people right now that I have wrestled that are wrestling on TV, and I wrestled them in my backyard whenever I was 21 years old. People that are currently in Japan, people that are under contract with AEW, people that are former Ring of Honor champions that I had wrestling matches with in my backyard 15, 20 years ago. It's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that's one thing. Like I know backyard wrestling has like a bad reputation, and those tapes are probably something to do with it because they just kind of showcase the hardcore and the deathmatch stuff.
And
But
Mick
they're
Foley too, because him jumping off of houses and like the stuff that he showed as what his backyard wrestling was kind of ended up being what people perceived it to be.
Yeah, but there's a whole nother side that I don't think gets the recognition it deserves. And that's something I'm glad your documentary called out. It's something I try and focus on with my channel is just this brotherhood that gets created and the positivity that comes out of backyard wrestling, which is bringing all these people together.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't always go like the smoothest when you have so many different personalities and stuff
Yeah.
like that together. Especially whenever it's a bunch of 20, 30 something year old men that all want to do what they want to do. So of course there's brotherhood infighting and bickering and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like no one's gonna roll up on this crew of 40 dudes that are standing in a backyard and try and mess with any single one of us, which I always thought was like we had we had a whole bunch of shows in a really dangerous neighborhood out in the east side of Pennsylvania called Allentown. And there were shootings there on a bi-weekly basis. There were robberies. There was everything going on there. But whenever us 40, 50 dudes rolled into this alleyway in the back neighborhoods of Allentown, people came to visit. We were the attraction. They all come and hang out. They were never there to mess with us. They were there to chill and have a good time and ask us if we wanted to fry up some chicken and barbecue some burgers or whatever. Like they were there to hang out with us. And it was almost like we felt protected by the local people that were probably not the safest people to hang out with, but they loved us. So they allowed us into their neighborhood to have these ridiculous backyard wrestling shows.
That is so awesome. I love that. I love focusing on the positivity that comes out of backyard wrestling. Yeah, we did crazy stuff. Yeah, we did a lot of stupid stuff, but there's so much good that came out of it that I wish got more focus.
And not just even on the Brotherhood side, but also on the actual wrestling side. Like, I know that my channel has a lot of it, so it's hard sometimes to like try and find the right thing to watch. And I try to tag some of it with like BYW iconic matches or whatever, just so people know that like you see that, you're like, oh, this one's a good one. I'm gonna click on it. And like I don't necessarily want to put any other matches down by not giving them that tag or whatever, but like I want people to know that like if you're coming to look for some cool wrestling, find these BYW iconic matches tags and watch them, because the spots and the innovation and the athleticism and the comedy and the ideas that came out of these backyards are stuff that literally shaped what professional wrestling became over the 10 years since we were doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so many, like I do a lot of like match watch-alongs, and there'll be times where I'm like, oh, CM Punk and Randy Orton did that spot 10 years later, but here we
Hmm.
are in 2003 doing it.
Yep.
Y- You know, and like we talked earlier about how some stuff doesn't always hold up when you're, some of the ideas you have as a kid don't always translate well in this day and age. I did a video about problematic storylines we did and problematic angles, and I made sure to like reach out to a couple people in the video and be like, "Hey, are you okay with me posting this? If not, I won't post it. But if you're okay with it, I'll put it out." Just because some of that stuff, yeah, like doesn't hold up. Like I don't know about you, we did a reverse affirmative action match where the white guy was allowed to use weapons, but the black guy couldn't. And so stuff
That's
like that, I'm just like, oh, we had a group called the Nation of Masturbation. It was
oh
like it was
man,
like if the
that's funny.
NWO was made up of like Gold Dust and the Dicks and Orlando Jordan.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's funny. We did one storyline similar to that that I spoke about, I think, on episode 3 of our podcast with my friend Hack. Him and his childhood, one of his best friends went to Catholic school together, so their gimmick was the children of God. And they would come out doing the cross and all the stuff and preach and all the shit. And Ed turns on him out of nowhere, and he used to like write "Fear God" on his like abdomen, torso, and he turns on his boy, hits the RKO. We grab the marker, cross off "Fear," right? Fuck. He's like, "Fuck God, fuck BGB, fuck Children of God, fuck Sunday school," and like just. And years later, he's like, probably shouldn't have done that." And I'm like, "Oh, it's on camera, bro. I don't know what you want from me. You're the one, you're the actor. I'm just the camera guy."
Yeah. No, totally. One thing that's great that I love what your channel's doing and what I'm trying to do with my channel is we're preserving this content for future generations. Like some of the people I used to wrestle with now have kids, and their
Yeah.
kids are watching the backyard wrestling stuff we did, and they're getting excited off of it, and they're gonna want to try to do backyard wrestling, and they're messaging me on Instagram and asking for advice, and I'm passing on years of wisdom down to them. And so I think it's so cool that we're like preserving this for the next generation to hopefully follow in our footsteps because it's so much easier now than it was when we were doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And connecting is easier. That's the easiest thing that you could do in today's society is just get on the internet and talk to each other. Um, there's actually this group of kids, they're fed, I think it's called BSW, who stumbled upon one of the first videos that I posted on Golden Triangle Media. And the kid comments on every single video I put out. He's probably the biggest fan that I have, at least on this. And his YouTube channel, whenever he first started commenting on my stuff, had 7 subscribers, and he started copying the stuff that we did and stealing our moves and asking questions and advice. He in the last few months, he's up to like 1,600 subs, and every video that he posts gets 1,000+ views, and like he's building a fan base based on like being a fan of us. And it's so cool to watch, man. Like I think he's maybe 13 or 14 or something like that, like in that age range. And it's just like that was us like 15, 20 years ago. And now this kid found us on the internet and he's trying to do it. So he just recently asked for a tutorial video on how to build a wrestling base. So I think I'm gonna throw one of those together and see if the next
Nice.
gen bites on it at all.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I know like when I was doing it, like we're shooting on like VHS camcorders, we're editing with VCRs, we didn't have the tools available to us now. Like now you can shoot a whole show on your phone in 4K. You can get a little DJI gyro, have everything look super smooth, make sure everything's in focus. You can make graphics in Canva. You can edit everything in CapCut, post it on social media, link up with people and get people booked for your shows and find audiences. It's so much easier now than when you and me were
It's
doing it.
Bro, it is literally insane because whenever we would travel to these places, we wouldn't always take a camera with us. It would almost be the job of the person that's running the show to make sure that everything gets filmed. And after the show's over, of course, you want to see your match if you're just like a little narcissistic or a little bit of a fan of yourself, you know. You want to see what you did. So you find the right person that filmed it and has it the time to transfer it to their computer and then email you this gigabyte file that's going to take 10 hours to download overnight on your dial-up family computer. And it was absolutely absurd how difficult it was to film this stuff and get it back to each other. And that's why a lot of the stuff you see of some of our older things are music videos, because it was like the most compact, quick, easy to digest way of putting this media out there, because like hundreds of megabytes full matches were not something that we were able to widely distribute on the technology that we had.
Yeah, I mean, even when YouTube first came out, there was like time limit restrictions. You could only upload like 10-minute clips.
10 minutes. Yeah.
So,
When you have like a 30-minute match, it would be three parts.
yeah, and you can just watch the views go down, and people who watch part three is like a fraction of who watched part one.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys in the documentary talked about getting trained and going pro. Josh got trained, didn't he? Josh got
Yeah.
trained. Where
Mhm.
did you ever get trained? Did you ever go to wrestling school?
So I've taken wrestling school classes, but I never went through like a whole training regimen ever.
Okay.
Um, But I would say, like, I'm very comfortable right now. I could have a fully trained professional wrestling match because I have been trained by hundreds of professional wrestlers, whether it be in person or over the internet, that have all taught me how to do this stuff. So, like, even though I haven't gone through like the official route of going to a wrestling school and paying somebody to say that they were my trainer, I have been trained to be a professional wrestler.
Okay, that's what's up. I know. I once we were done wrestling, I went to college, and then after college, I was like, I'm gonna get trained. And then I found out that one, spoilers, I'm not an athlete. I'm totally not cut out. In my head, I'm Kurt Angle. The mind is willing, but the body isn't. But then also I picked a really janky school because I just went with like the cheapest one I could find. And that was
Yeah.
I just set myself up for failure. So
Yeah.
I totally feel you on that one. I thought
The same
that's
thing
that.
happened with Hack Edgeman, man. He was the most heart I've ever seen out of anybody wanting to be a professional wrestler. He ate, slept, and breathed this stuff. Watched PWG, CZW, deathmatch tournaments, like everything that he could get his hands on from Smart Mark Video. He was watching constantly, writing down spots, coming up with ideas on the computer 24/7. Finally convinces his parents, like, this is what I want to do. Let me go to wrestling school. Like maybe you could help me with a couple bucks, but even if you can't, like this is just what I want to do. And so like his dad kicked him a nickel or two. It wasn't any big investment, but he did most of it on his own. And he just picked the wrong school, man. And the guy treated him like crap and he didn't help him at all. And one time the dude was like, training at the school's canceled today. Come over to my house and we're gonna do some like lecture type situation. So him and another friend of mine and a couple other people go over to dude's house and he just like hits play on a best of Bret Hart DVD and just walks around the house talking to his niece on the phone the whole time. So like that was the last day that he ever did any type of wrestling training. It broke him from like, and after that he was just out. He was out of love of
Yeah.
it. He was like, I'm done. If this is what it is, I don't want nothing to do with it. So like picking the wrong school can definitely sink you.
Oh yeah, no, the school I picked because wrestling school, for people who don't know, it's not cheap, and
Mm-mm.
especially like back in the day, when minimum wage is 7.25 an hour, and then tuition at a wrestling school is like 300-400 bucks a month. Like that's a lot. That's half your paycheck right there just to go to wrestling school. I picked a really cheap school, and like they didn't have like a gym. Like the ring was in the guy's backyard, so I was like, oh cool, at least I feel at home.
Yeah.
But then like when it was raining, they wouldn't train. And so like my first like 2 months there, I got in the ring like four times. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
sucks. I'm not
Yep.
it's because your body needs to callus, you need to build that muscle memory. And it just I had buyer's remorse from like day one.
Yeah, super unfortunate. And like because of Hack's experience, that's why I decided like I'm just gonna be the big fish in the small pond. I'm gonna book backyard wrestling shows and try and get over. Because like honestly, at the end of the day, what we were doing made us feel like we already were professional wrestlers.
Yeah.
We just weren't getting paid for it monetarily. We were getting paid for it in life experience and having great times, because these shows, as soon as they're over, they turn into parties and it's just 50 people packed into three hotel rooms, just having the time of their life, traveling the roads, doing all the stuff. And then like getting the feedback of as soon as the shows were over, they would post superlative threads and everybody would talk about like what was the best match of the weekend, what was the funniest spot, what was the best chant, what was the stiffest shot, and all this stuff. So like you would go through this whole process and get home and have everybody become Dave Meltzer and start rating your matches and stuff like that. And so like it felt like we were pro wrestlers to an extent already. So like paying somebody to do something in a less creative manner with a lot more constraints, like it was just never my bag.
Yeah. We never had the mindset of, oh, all the backyard wrestlers have the mindset of, oh, I'm better than these pro guys. We never thought that. We were like, we probably know some stuff. We probably don't know more than we know. We probably don't know what we don't know. Like we at least wanted to like give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We thought we'd be good. We thought
Yeah,
we would take to it like a duck to water, and then we didn't. One of our guys who wrestled with us actually did go pro. He actually made his pro debut last year, and so a bunch of us backyarders came out to his debut match and supported him, took
so
pictures with
sick.
him and everything. And it's like, cool, one of us made it. That's all that matters. One of us made it. It was all worth it if one of us got to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had from our local, we had three. Yeah, we had three. We have Josh Todd, Sean Phoenix, and Jimmy Nutter that all did at least something pro related bigger than, a bingo hall with six people in it.
Yeah. Now, did you ever notice that like I don't know if this is true of your group of people, but it seemed like to me the people who you always thought were gonna go pro somehow never did. Something always got in the way. Like we had a guy, Kid Crush. He was like our best wrestler by far. It was impossible for him to have a bad match. And we thought if any of us was gonna go pro, it's him. And then he went to wrestling school and never finished, and life kept getting in the way, and he never got that far. Did you guys ever have anybody like that?
Well, so my boy Ed that I was talking about that kind of got blocked in training, but like from from the overall scene, a guy we've mentioned a couple times already, Anarchy Andy man, like he did go pro, but we all thought that he was gonna explode. Like he was gonna be main eventing Monday Night Raws and stuff. Like we were positive that Anarchy Andy was our golden goose. And he got a couple like little exposure opportunities with like CZW and whatnot. Um, but it just seems like it never took off for him, and for whatever reason it didn't make it much further than Pennsylvania. And I think part of that was like he was getting a little older and his body had gone through some stuff because if you've ever seen an Anarchy Andy match, he had no breaks. It
No.
was just go go go, land on your head 100 times, do all the flips, take all the bumps that nobody else will take, and not only that but do it all perfectly, like crisp, clean, looking like an athlete, not looking like a backyard wrestler, like everything he did was so perfect that it was like this guy is going to be a WWE guy one day and nobody can stop him. And I mean, something did. Um, I'm not exactly sure because like I am friends with him, but like I don't know exactly what the last straw was that made him hang it up, but I'm sure it was like injury related.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the guy, man. Anarchy Andy should have been everything.
Yeah, because I mean, like he's wrestling like blue shirt and blue pants,
Hmm.
but he's doing all this amazing like X division cruiserweight stuff. He's hitting like standing 450 splashes. He's like you said, he was. If anybody should have gone pro, it should have been him. He should have made it.
Yeah. And but out of that, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, Alex Zane uh was in 205 Live and now he's working Japan like regularly. Um he looks better than he ever did before. He's fantastic, and he just continued to get better over time. Tony Deppen made it to Ring of Honor, and he was doing great stuff there. He's like one of the top guys in GCW most of the time. He's their gatekeeper, and he's like a huge fan of Pittsburgh, so he was just excited to come. I hung out with him on non-wrestling occasions. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to a Pirate game. You should meet up with me." So he drove out to Pittsburgh. We met up and went to a Pirate game together. So it's like a lot of people in the community did do really, really cool things, and it's just surprising that Anarchy Andy wasn't one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so one of the main focuses of that documentary is the reunion show you guys did. It was 10 years after you guys stopped backyarding, right?
Yep.
So what was that reunion show like? Was it like riding a bicycle again? Was there ring rust? Was there any drama behind the scenes? Talk to me about that reunion show.
Well, so in terms of like setting it up, it was labor intensive because a lot of people were kind of like on the fence of like, is this actually going to happen? Quite a few people tried to do something like this over the last 10 years here and there, but it just seems like it always fell flat pretty quickly. Um, I made a best of backyard wrestling music video from our community, and it got received very well to the point where I was receiving messages from these people talking about how much they miss the group of guys and how much they wish we could do this again. And whenever I posted this, I already had it in my mind that like I would like to do a reunion show. Um, so as soon as this posts and people go absolutely insane with it, sharing it everywhere, I mean, it got 4,000 views in a week. So I start talking with people about would you come out to Pittsburgh like that day? And within 48 hours after posting the video, I'm announcing that we're having the show, and everybody is really super excited. But every single person was like, hit me back up in a few months. Like, whenever we're getting closer, whenever you have a date, then we'll talk about it and I'll see for sure if I can make it. So, a lot of the times it was checking in, like, hey, did you take the days off? Hey, these are the exact dates. Or, do you want in on the party church? Because we booked a church that got converted into a concert venue slash Airbnb to host us for the weekend while we weren't wrestling. So we could all stay together and hang out with each other and like do the reunion thing and all be in one place. So I was like trying to sell that to people like, hey, you want to be in, there's only 20 spots in the church, you know? It was so much like constant communication with everybody that I think it was necessary to make the show go off the way that it did because I think a lot of people would have like kind of swept it under the rug is like, yeah, this probably won't happen. So like I kept letting everybody know this is happening and you need to be here over and over and over again. And the day that it's time to do the show and everybody starts showing up and I'm sitting in the parking lot and one at a time cars start pulling in, man, like I felt like I was 20 years old all over again, dude. We talked like we had just seen each other a month ago. Like it was fantastic. Like, hey man, what's up? You still doing this? How's that going? Like, oh cool, Henry's here. Let's go say what's up. Like, and it just became like a circle of like 15 people in the parking lot and like kind of broke down into a few little groups of three here and there and everybody intermingling. It was amazing. It was everything that I ever wanted it to be like in one moment. Like that was what it was all about was getting the people back together. Um, and in terms of like the wrestling side of it, I mean, most of the people that wrestled on the show have gone on to be like trained professional wrestlers. So like most of them were still working. I personally hadn't had a wrestling match since 2014 before I had my match on this show. And because of that, I had been taking a couple of training classes and I got in a ring a few times and I got myself back into shape and started eating better for a few weeks just to try to make sure that I was like I didn't want to leave any stone unturned with being as good as I could possibly be, even if it wasn't the best or even if it wasn't as good as I used to be or whatever. Like, I just didn't want to say that I didn't try. So I like went really hard to make sure that I can at least get in there and do something passable so that it doesn't tarnish anything else that I'd done in the past.
Yeah, I mean that reunion show looked like so much fun. You could totally see the emotion on the screen. I actually showed one of my backyard wrestling buddies your documentary, and he was like, "Dude, we should do a reunion show. That looks like fun. We should do that." So we're tossing around the idea of like reconnecting with some of the people we've lost touch with and maybe putting something together. Who knows if we will or not? But
Yeah.
it's been super motivational seeing how you were able to pull it off, and again, just seeing all those emotions from people.
I'll tell you what, man, you will not regret it. Being able to relive some of these best times in your life with the people that you got to live them with and like even if there was some weird stuff going on back in that day, like none of that stuff ever stands out. It's always like the good memories, like the best of the best stuff that you always think about. And like you want to get together with that person that you haven't seen in such a long time and maybe talk about the memories or pretend like they never happened and just talk like you're still best friends. Like
Yeah.
it was a fantastic experience and being able to be the person that was like the figurehead of getting everybody back together was such a rewarding experience. Um, I would say a good 60% of the people that attended the show came up to me on a one-on-one situation to like thank me for everything that I did for the show. And it was like overwhelming after a while because everybody's like, look, I know a lot of people aren't going to thank you, but I want to make sure that I do. And like after a while, I'm like, no, everybody is thanking. Like this job has not been thankless. It has been nothing but gratitude from the community. And it was just like such a point of pride that I was able to help get all these people back together. So much to the point where on day two of the show, one of our other bookers from back in the day, Tommy Flambeau, came up to me and he's like, hey, uh, I own the yard that XWA used to be in right now. and I want to do one of these next year. So would you mind if I hopped in the ring and announced that I'm doing a show next year? And I was like, go, dude, do your thing. Like, I am not the king of backyard wrestling out here, man. You know how this works. Like, if you want to have a show, have a show. Go tell people about it. I'll see you there. Like, let's do it. I'm excited for this year.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And like I love it was really inspiring seeing that and just seeing how active backyard wrestling is now. You're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing. Indie Wrestling School puts out their backyard wrestling cinema videos where he's recounting his time as a backyard wrestler. It's so great seeing backyard wrestling finally get its flowers because it was like this redheaded stepchild for so long. It was looked down on. People looked at those best of backyard wrestling tapes and that they thought that's all it was. And so it's nice that there's all these outlets now where we can showcase the positivity that comes out of backyard wrestling. You're doing the Lord's work, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I don't know if you're on Twitter at all, but there's a dude on there, Four Pillars of Hell, and him and a few other writers just this last week started doing a backyard wrestling blog where they're rewatching all the old stuff that they come across YouTube, and they're going to try to make like a definitive top 100 backyard wrestling matches of all time list, which is so absurd. Like, it's 2025. I was having these shows in 2007, 2008, and they're
Yeah.
now being seen and discussed by like professional wrestling writers. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, no, I just saw your Backyardigans podcast with him. So
Hmm.
yeah, that seems like a huge undertaking because they were talking about like, oh, we're gonna vote on it and it's definitely in, it might be in, and we're gonna narrow it down.
Yeah, man. And like their first one just dropped this last Monday, and each one of the four writers wrote multiple paragraphs about what they thought about the first match that they watched, and just reading their outsider's point of view of something that I lived and helped create is really cool, because all I ever know is what me and my community thought of the stuff we did. I didn't get to see like somebody whose main interest in wrestling might be like Ring of Honor or WWE, like look at our stuff and say this is what I'm seeing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little blurry
So
there.
it's all good. So now that you're older and wiser, when you look back on your time as backyard wrestling, has your opinion of backyard wrestling changed at all over the years? Do you look at it differently now than you did back in the day?
Yeah, we took it way too seriously. Like, there was a lot of politics and infighting, and a whole lot of I'm better than you, I'm better than you, you don't deserve this match. You like We were backyard wrestlers, bro. Like, that's what we were doing. And I think like that um that what's the word I'm looking for? Competition. That competition between us made the shows what they were, but also at the same time, like, it was unfounded because the only people that were ever going to see it were the people that were arguing about it. Like, it didn't make sense. Like, looking back at it, it doesn't add up. But I mean, thinking back of like some of the really, really dumb stuff we did, like, yeah. Back in the day, I used to pop for that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's cool. I want to see more of that kind of stuff. And at the reunion show, man, like, we were all working. We were not like, we weren't taking dumb bumps. Some people did a couple times, but like, it wasn't about that. We were there to like tell stories and work wrestling matches and come up with fun and creative spots. But like, there was not dangerous stuff for the most part. Like, my match, I did a couple things that you would consider dangerous, maybe, but overarching the theme was like, hey, we're all older now, we're all back together, and we all actually understand what it means to be a professional wrestler. So let's maybe just be professional wrestlers this weekend and not backyard wrestlers. And I like doing what we did back then, created some incredible video clips, but like, I don't want to see me or any of my friends try a lot of that stuff these days.
Yeah, no, same. That's one thing I harp on a lot in the videos I do is I'm like, boy, I took this way too seriously. I was way too obsessed with play fighting with my friends on the weekend,
Hmm.
you know. And some of the thing I look at some of the crazy bumps we did, and I'm just like, why is this like the second spot in the match? This should be the
Oh my
finish. What are we
God.
doing?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm telling the BSW kid that's always commenting on my stuff is like, he's like, should I build a base? What should I do? How do I go about this? And I'm like, just slow everything down. Make sure everybody that you're working with is safe. Make sure you learn what you're doing. And eventually you could try some of the fun stuff, but just please be careful because I don't want you to see our stuff and try it and get hurt. And now your mom's mad at me. Like, just be as safe as you could possibly be until you know what you're doing and have fun.
Yeah. That's the best advice I give when my backyard wrestling friends kids reach out to me. I'm like, be safe, have fun. If you're gonna do something stupid and crazy, at least make it to finish.
Yeah, yeah, and make sure the camera guy is pointed at you.
Oh my God, there's that goddamn camera guy. There's so many spots we did, and then we're watching the tape afterwards, and like this, they zoomed in at the wrong time, or it's out of focus, or they missed the shot, and we're like, no, I took that bump for
Oh,
nothing.
man. So, one of our more infamous stories, we had a show with like four matches on it, and the fourth match, it was bad. It was really bad. And by the end of it, it like started to rain a little bit. And most of us were like, come on, guys, just wrap it up. Like, dude, we're trying to get in. Like we're over it. Your match sucks. This weather sucks. Like we're done. Wrap it up. So unfortunately, the kid that was wrestling was the guy that had the camera. So he takes the camera into his house and deletes the entire show and tells us like, I don't know what happened, guys. Something happened with the camera. Must have got rained on or something. Like, no, the camera was perfectly fine. So like it started a big riff in our like wrestling fed and we called it the show that never happened. And it's like we talk more about that show than most of the shows that we actually do have the media of just because we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we could just see what happened? Like I remember we did this and we never got to see it.
Yeah, that's one thing with my stuff is like in my head, I remember stuff being way better than it was, and then I'm watching it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's is that how it came out? Ah, I remember it different. Okay.
Yeah, especially some of the earlier stuff. Like as we got on with it, stuff was actually looking a lot better. But some of the first stuff we did, I remember thinking that it was cool, and it absolutely was not.
Yeah, no, same, same. Well, Rick, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for doing this, my man. Where can people find you? Where can people find Golden Triangle Media? What could they have to look forward to coming from you in Golden Triangle?
Okay, so we got Golden Triangle Media on YouTube. We also have Golden Triangle Media and X Yarders on Twitter, slash X, whatever you want to call it. Golden Triangle Media is more just for like the company and showing people what we have coming up, whereas X Yarders is a whole bunch of clips and stuff that I've collected from my time where I try to shine some light on some of the crazier things that we had happen in our specific community. Um, we also have an Instagram page that's starting to blow up thanks to Supervillain Deathmatch. He's been co-hosting a lot of reels with us. He has 500,000 followers, so every time that he is willing to help us out with something like that, it's huge. Currently working on trying to get this Backyardians interviews up off the ground. I'm going to be trying to do stuff like this, but I want to be more in your seat and see how
Hmm.
that goes with some of the people that I wrestled with and talk with them and maybe a little more short form just because that's my preference for watching videos. So I'm going to try and put it out that way. But also I have currently 5 terabytes of backyard wrestling footage that I need to go through and upscale and edit to make sure that there's nothing too, 2000s that comes out or, a little too boys will be boys. So we got to make sure that as much as it is a time capsule, that's not stuff that needs to be on the internet. So I have to comb through a lot of this stuff to make sure that it's presentable. But I'm also in the process of receiving 150 mini DV tapes, completely filled up with entire full shows from our community, from one of our wrestlers, Jonah. And none of us knew he had these tapes. We thought maybe he like recorded over them and just put it on his computer. No, every time a DV tape filled up, he put it in a box and started a new one. And he's kept them for the last 20 years. So he's sending them to me. I'm going to be transferring them. I just ordered the Ethernet card for my PC, or not the Ethernet card, the Firewire card for my PC. So I'm gonna be getting all this up, and we got 150 hours more of backyard wrestling that people have probably never seen before. I have too much content to even know where to go from here. So like we're definitely gonna do some more interviews. We're gonna do a lot more backyard wrestling. We have another reunion show coming up this year that Golden Triangle Media is gonna host. I still have to post the rest of the footage from this past year's reunion show because right now I only have like most of day one up. But I mean, music videos and full shows and full matches and clip packages and all that is going to be coming for the foreseeable future. I don't know when it could even stop based on how big this hard drive is.
That's so awesome to hear. I love hearing about that. Keep doing what you're doing, sir. So everybody out there, check out Backyard Wrestling. It's not dead yet. Follow Golden Triangle Media everywhere you can. You're not going to be disappointed. This guy's putting out some fantastic stuff. Rick, thank you so much for giving me your time today. This was an absolute blast.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun for me too, especially because I'm more used to being on the host side. So being on the interviewee side is really nice. And maybe we can get together again and talk about something else sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. We have each other's info. I'm down for anything.
All right, man. Cool. It was nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you, Rick. Thank you so much.